10th of March 1968, Mr. J. Krishnamurti's first public talk in Rome.
Surely all human problems are interrelated. There is no separated, isolated problem by itself. And in this, there is no east or west. Because human problems are common to all mankind, whether born in India, in Russia, America, or in England, or anywhere else. And we are apt, I'm afraid, to consider one problem isolated from other problems. And if we could understand the totality of all the problems, and this can only be done if we are capable, if we are earnest enough to investigate, to go deeply into one problem. And then we will say that all other problems are related to that. And this is, I feel, rather important to understand. There is no problem by itself. Every problem is related to all other problems. And we have, as human beings, innumerable problems. Apparently, whatever we touch becomes a problem. And so, we have this morning, and in the successive two talks, to consider the many problems, the many issues that confront each one as a human being. You know exactly what is happening in the world. There's tremendous lot of violence, uncertainty, fear, organized, flourishing anarchy in society. Society has become a structure in which there is war, in which there are separate, organized religions, each at war with other. There are nationalities divided against each other. And man, throughout the world, has lost faith. He doesn't trust anybody anymore. Neither the religions, nor the priests, nor the leaders, nobody, nor their own parents. Because the older generation has created a monstrous world. A world in which there is constant war, insecurity, and so fear. Religion, whether it is the religion in this country or in India or in the Far East, which is Buddhism, it has no meaning whatsoever anymore. Though the priests in all the organized religions talk everlastingly about being kind, loving, in the name of God, in the name of Christ, in the name of all kinds of deities. But the fact is, there is great deal of hate, antagonism, brutality, violence, greed, envy. And man is beginning to realize that there is nobody he can turn to help him out of this chaos and misery. So what we are going to do is examine the facts, not the supposed facts, nor what we think we should be. Because ideologies have very little meaning anymore. Whether you believe in God or don't believe in God is a matter of conditioning. You are conditioned in this country, like in India or elsewhere, except in Russia and the communist world, you are conditioned to believe in God, in a Savior, through the priest, through the church. And so are they in India, conditioned through 2 centuries in the Western world of propaganda, made to believe. So you are conditioned in the belief of God and all the rest of it. And the communist world, they are being conditioned not to believe in all that nonsense. So we human beings, through propaganda, through clever intellectual groups throughout the world, in the past as well as in the present, we are being conditioned by words, by various formulas, ideologies. And we have divided the world not only religiously, but also nationally. India, Europe, America, and so on. And also the world is divided by ideologies. The capitalist ideology and the communist ideology. And ideologies are always absurd, they are idiotic. They have no meaning whatsoever. What has meaning and what is of great significance is what is, not what should be, or what might be, or what might have been in the past. You know, when man is terribly confused as we are, he either resorts to the past, to the culture in which he has been brought up, hoping thereby need we have go through all this? Hoping thereby to shape his thought differently. So ideologies have failed. Education has failed. They give you marvelous technological knowledge. Go to the moon. How to run a computer. How to kill thousands of people from great distances But we haven't solved our human problems. That is, how to live together as human beings, together, cooperating together. Find unity between man and man in his relationship. And that's the only thing that matters, and nothing else. Not the beliefs you of gods, churches, rituals, priests, the experts in war, but how to live together as human beings peacefully, with love, generosity, and without violence. That is the basic problem. Otherwise we're going to destroy each other. And we are. We have become so colossally self-centered, selfish. Because as we said, society is organized to function anarchistically, in chaos. So every human being is concerned with this primary problem. Is it possible to live in this world earning a livelihood, having great technological knowledge, and yet not destroy each other? To live at peace. Because peace is necessary. Not the peace of the politicians between two wars, but the peace in daily life. In which there is no competition, the destructive ambition, the separation between the black and the white and the brown and the blue and all the rest of it. And is it possible? Is it possible to live with a mind that's highly capable, highly intelligent, and therefore sensitive, and with that love in which there is no hate, no jealousy, no envy, and this being the central problem, and this has been the problem throughout the ages, to find a right relationship between man and man, to live peacefully, to live without hate. That has been the major issue throughout the ages. And man hasn't been able to do it. We have lived probably many millions of years, and we haven't been able to solve this problem. And religions have offered an escape from this problem. Because religions have admitted war as a way of life. And we have accepted war, conflict, battle in relationship as the way of life. These are all facts. And we have come to a period when man has actually lost faith, trust in everything organized, religiously, spiritually. Of course, we must have the organization that gives you milk and delivers you letters and so on. But the superstructure which man has built, which is producing wars, riots, separation, naturally one must totally reject such a society. So there is a revolt against this society by the young, the Capellones, the hippies, and so on, the Beatles and all the rest of those people, the youth. They are in revolt against this structure of society which breeds war, hate, antagonism. There are two kinds of activities. Either one is a total revolutionary, or one merely revolts. We are using the word revolutionary not in the communist sense of the word, merely a change of economic conditioning, or or overthrowing one government by another, and so on. The bloody revolution. We are not talking of that at all. We mean by a revolution where man, who has been so heavily conditioned for centuries by propaganda, by words, and to completely free himself from the structure of society which he has created psychologically through greed, through envy, through ambition, through brutality, to completely bring about a revolution there, that is of the highest revolution, complete mutation. If that does not take place, then revolt, as most young people throughout the world are doing, then without understanding the whole structure of society, how it has been put together by man. Man has invented his gods. Man has created a society which is corrupt. Man has divided into countries into nationalities. And without understanding this structure, merely to revolt against it, is to fall into another trap. So we have this problem. Youth revolting against the structure and perhaps falling into a new trap. And he will. Because he does not understand the psychological structure which has brought about this society. And the real revolutionary is the man who understands completely, not intellectually, this social order, which is himself. He is part of that social order. And that being the problem, that man has to change radically, fundamentally. There must be mutation in the very brain cells of his mind and heart. And that has been going on. People have said you must change, you must act, you must change your mind, your heart, you must be something totally different. This has been preached for thousands of years by men who are serious, who are very earnest, and by those who are just charlatans, exploiting people. And we have come to a point when we have no time at all. Please do understand this. We haven't time to take this change gradually. So the intellectuals throughout the world have realized this. That man is on the edge of a precipice. He's going to destroy himself. No religions are going to prevent it. No gods, no saviors, no masters. And all the nonsense of the gurus. So the intellectuals throughout this world say, we must invent a new drug. A golden drug that will bring about a complete change chemically. And the scientists are probably going to find such a drug. I do not know if you are aware of all this. And can a drug, though the whole physical organism is a biochemic result, can, by taking a drug, the super drug, can such a drug make you love? Make you be kind, gentle, generous, non-violent? I do not think so. I do not think a drug can make a human being love another. Love is not a product of thought. Love is not something to be cultivated, as you would cultivate a flower in a garden. Love cannot be bought in a drugstore. And yet that is the only thing that's going to save man. Not all the religious tricks, all the rituals, nor the army. One may escape to museums, to concerts, to various forms of amusements. But man now is facing a tremendous problem. Whether he can change, radically bring about a total mutation in his whole consciousness. And not tomorrow, not a few years later, but now. That is the real issue. Whether man, whatever country he lives in, with all the beauty of the land, can he so radically bring about within himself such mutation immediately? That is the issue. Not what you believe, your ideologies, your gods, your priests, your saviors, your rituals have no meaning anymore anyhow. So, what we're going to discuss, talk over together during this talk and the next two talks is to find out, if you are at all serious, to find out if man, if you and I, not theoretically, not intellectually, verbally, but actually change the whole way of our thinking, the way of our thought, and therefore the way of our life, which is, life is relationship. Otherwise, if there is no relationship, you cannot live. Even the monk in his monastery, which is really an abode of escape, even he is related. So, relationship means life. And when there is conflict in that relationship, whether it is within yourself or with your neighbor or with your wife or your husband, with anybody, then life becomes a battlefield. And we have made life the daily living, which ultimately ends in Vietnam, for which we are all responsible, not the Americans. They are responsible, as well as the Italians, the Americans, the Russians, the Indians. Everybody is responsible for every war. Because we are human beings, we have created wars. That's part of our life. And to say the Americans are dreadful people, violent people, so are you. We don't feel this responsibility at all. You know, we were walking the other day in a field with woods. There wasn't a single bird, and it is springtime. And two men went by with guns, shooting birds. And you're brought up to kill animals to eat. Your whole life is violent. I don't think you realize how terribly serious the whole thing is. If one felt utterly responsible for every war, then we will create each one of us a different society. We'll have a different kind of education, different history books. But we are not interested. We don't feel we are responsible. And that's why the younger generation is revolting against you. And they must. But unfortunately, if they don't understand the nature of human beings, they will create another society which will be corrupt and destructive in another way. So the problem is how to bring about this change in the human mind and the human heart. Whether intellect can bring this about. That is, the capacity to think very clearly, logically, sanely, objectively. That is the function of the intellect. But the intellect, as we see now in the world, has brought about this destructive society. The intellect has invented guns. The intellect has invented class. The intellect, seeking security in gods, has created the organization of belief which is called religion. That is, thought has brought about this structure which is called society. I hope you are following all this, but we'll say. So thought is responsible. Intellect is responsible for the war in Vietnam, for the war between you, your wife or husband, war between your neighbor, war within yourself. Thought has generated this, which is the function of the intellect. And also, of course, the intellect also invents the computer, the aeroplane, the atomic bomb, the missiles that will destroy thousands of people. And also the intellect, the thought, has given modern man comfort. So man says, if he is at all aware, can thought bring about this change? Thought being the response of memory, which is the accumulation of experience as knowledge. Can that knowledge, experience, memory bring about a radical revolution in our minds and heart? Thought. Can thought bring about this change? Please. This is not a lecture. A professor giving a lecture and you casually listening to it, agreeing or disagreeing, accepting what you like and rejecting what you don't like. This is not such a kind of talk. Here, we are sharing the problems together as two human beings. We are trying together to take a journey into this enormous, complex problem of living. So it's your responsibility how you listen and what you will do with what you have listened to. Because if you listen with full attention, and you can only listen when you are really serious, when you see the enormous danger, then you become serious. And if you listen with your prejudices, if you listen as a Catholic, as a Protestant, as a Hindu, Buddhist, whatever you will, then you are not listening at all. You can only listen when you are not translating what is being said in your own terminology, with your own background. Listening is an act, an immediate act, which reveals the whole problem. It's like seeing. No, I do not know. If you ever try to look at something, try to look at a flower, at a cloud, or a tree. If you have looked, or you're looking at that tree, at that cloud, and at that flower, through the image that you have built about that flower, tree, and cloud, if you have, then you are really not looking at the flower. You are looking through the image that you have about that flower. And we do look at another through an image. Like the wife looks at the husband with an image she has built up throughout the years of marriage or non-marriage. And he has built an image about her. The image being all the pleasure, sensual, sexual, comfort, the irritations, the the flatteries, how one builds up in relationship. So, you neither look at the flower without the image, nor look at another, your wife or husband or your neighbor, without an image. And so you never look. So you never see a flower either. Nor the beautiful statue. You want to know, you have an image, you have a symbol, you want to find out who made it. And then you begin to admire. So, when you are listening to this talk, listen, please, listen. Don't have images, just listen. Then you will say, if you actually give your whole mind and your heart, then you will have nothing whatsoever to do. You will have done it. Then you will bring about an enormous change in yourself immediately. So as we were saying, this is not a talk in which your intellect merely indulges in the clever tricks of argument, of opinion, of judgment. We are examining very seriously this complex problem of living, which is your own life, not the life of the speaker or the life which he may describe. It's your life. And your life is responsible for the wars, for the misery, for the agony of every human being. And our question is whether it is possible to change. That certain things are involved in bringing about this change, what it means. Again, this is really a very complex question. You see, for most of us, change means a gradual process. I am this, I am violent, if you are aware at all of your violence. I am violent, and gradually, day after day, I'll get rid of it. And therefore, man has invented the ideology of non-violence. You understand? I am violent in my life, in my speech, in the way I act, look at people, talk, and all the rest of it. I am violent. That's a fact. That is what is. And I don't know what to do with it. I don't know how to change it. So I invent an ideology, which is, I must not be violent. And I hope by asserting I must not be violent, or using an ideology as an inspiration, I'll get rid of violence. Right? So there is an interval between the fact, what is, and what should be. That's clear. So, when there is an ideology of what should be, totally different from what is, then begins the conflict of duality. And we have invented this as a means of escape from what is. And man indulges in escape. They have been talking in India for, I don't know how long, not worth even to remember, of the ideology of non-violence. They have preached it up and down the land. And you have to in your own way here. And that leads to great hypocrisy. Because if you avoid what is the fact, you're bound to be hypocrite. So, ideologies as non-violent only leads to greater conflict. Please follow this step by step. I'm going into it. Because I don't know what to do with violence. I've always been taught not to be violent or to indulge in violence or find reasons for violence. After all, violence is the heritage man has inherited from the animal. We are the result of the animal. And animals are violent, except perhaps some few non-eating predators. So, the opposite of what is always breeds conflict. Please understand this, a very simple psychological fact. If you see this, not intellectually, but actually, then you have no ideas. Then you have no ideals, no opposites. Then you are faced with the fact of what is. Then begins the question, is it possible to change what is? And if there is no opposite, then what is all right. I don't know if you're following all this. Let me explain a little bit more, if I may. I'm angry, which is a form of violence. Or I dislike. And there's a great deal of violence in me as a human being. How do I know if I'm not the opposite? How do I know I'm violent? You're following all this? Do I know violence because I know non-violence? And this is important to understand, because we are going to go into this question of complete change. How to be completely free from violence, not only consciously, but at the unconscious level. And this one must understand very clearly. If you have no opposite as non-violence, how do you know you're violent? Or do you know it because you have the word which says you're violent? Please follow all this. Because most of us live on words. To a believer, the word God is tremendously important. And to us, the word means the very thing. Look, let's put it on the other way, simpler. The word is not the thing. Right? The word door is not the door. The word microphone is not the microphone which you touch. But to us, the symbol has become the reality. The symbol in a church or in a temple, the image, is reality. So, when we are looking into this question of violence, we must be very clear whether it is the word that makes us violent, and because we have the opposite, therefore we know we are violent. So if you have not the word nor the opposite, then what is violence? You're following all this? Please, take your own violence. I'm sure we're all violent in our own little ways. And look at it. Is that state of anger, hate, the result of the opposite, or is it evoked by the word? Please, this is very important to understand. The word being thought. Right? You cannot think without the word, without the symbol. There is no thinking at all without word. If you have no word, there is no thought. So, thought recognizes, thought being memory and all the rest of it, says this is violence. because it has experienced violence before. So, when there is a violence reaction, thought recognizes it as violent. That's simple. So, thought, through the word, says this is violent. There. So, thought is always old. Thought can never be new. Thought being memory, experience, knowledge. Whether that knowledge, experience, memory is conscious or unconscious. So, thought being always old recognizes the response as violence. But if this requires a great deal of meditation, which we'll perhaps go into another time. So can thought remain silent when the response of anger comes? You're following all this? Look, you as a Christian, believing in certain symbols and beliefs and dogmas, you who have been so conditioned through propaganda for 2,000 years, as they have been done in India for 5 and over 1,000 years, you who are the result of all thinking, can you look at yourself without the symbol of thought? Because when you look at yourself through thought, thought being old, you are looking at yourself in the old pattern. Therefore, you are establishing more and more the tradition of what you are. Right? So can you look at yourself? Can you look at what you have called violence without the whole mechanism of thought? Which doesn't mean that you go to sleep or become blank. On the contrary, it means highest awareness, highest attention. Have you ever, if I may ask, given complete attention to anything? Attention being with your mind, with your nerves, with your eyes, with your heart, with your ears. Give complete attention. In that attention, is there thought? And when you give complete attention in the sense we are using to that feeling which we have called violence, is there violence? So, if you have followed what has been said, not verbally or intellectually back, but actually using the speaker as a mirror in which you are looking at yourself, then you will see that when you give your complete attention, thought is absent, and therefore the thing becomes, or the thing what was, is totally changed. You know, we are used to change through will. I must do this. I must change that. We are used to that. Will is the product of desire. We are not saying it's right or wrong. We are looking at the fact. When you look at a fact, there is no judgment. It is a fact. And will is the result of desire, strengthened, hardened. And through will we hope to change. And when you examine will, which is the very essence of desire, you will see in will there is involved pleasure. So we say, I will change because the other will be more pleasurable, more safe, more secure. So will is not the way to bring about a change. Because in that is involved thought, desire, pleasure. And if you have observed, you will say that our whole social morality, which is really immoral, is based on pleasure. It's fairly obvious. And as thought cannot possibly change the human mind, thought being memory, thought being old, and will is always old also. Do look at it, examine it, you'll find out for yourself. So, the habits which we have cultivated through will as a means of bringing about a change, or thought as a means to bring about a required change, are completely useless. Because man has tried that. Then what is one to do? If thought will not change violence, nor will, and it is a proven fact, not a theory, that neither of these two have brought about a radical revolution in the human mind, then what will? I hope you have followed so far, not in abstraction, but actually. You know, to look at anything, one must have new eyes. Eyes that are innocent. eyes that are seeing things for the first time. Because to understand this violence, you must look at it totally new, not in the old way. To look at a flower or the marvelous cloud that carries the hills along. To look at it, you must have clear, unspotted eye. An eye that has lived, seen 1,000 experiences and is free of all experience. It's only then that you can see. And you can see only totally with innocent eyes only when you give your attention this attention is not the result of will. You can't say, I will attend. I will give my heart to this attention. If you do, then you have then brought about conflict in that attention. But if you actually see sensuously with your eyes, with your ears, with your heart, with your mind, actually see that it is only possible to bring about a radical revolution in the mind when you give complete attention to your words, to your gestures, to your meals, the way you eat, the things you eat, the words, the feelings, everything. Then you will say that there is a radical mutation in the mind and the heart. Without struggle, without effort, without an ideology. Such change is immediate because one has seen clearly the danger of violence. And there is the question whether the unconscious, which is the residue of all the past, whether that will interfere with the immediate action. You know, one has given such extraordinary importance to the unconscious. I wonder why. Of course, it's the fashion. It's been introduced by the analysts, by the psychologists. Why has man given such extraordinary importance to the unconscious? It is as stupid, as trivial, as nonsensical as the conscious brain. No? Because the unconscious is the past, the residue of the racial inheritance, and so on, so on, so on. As the conscious is. You can wipe away the whole of the unconscious with a single sweep when you realize the great importance of looking at things without the image. To look without the past. That means to look without fear. We'll go into it next time we meet.